All right, what's going on, everyone? So we're going to have a pretty Russia-heavy update here today. We're going to talk about some battlefield updates in Ukraine, some movement along the lines for the first time in quite a while. There were some TikTok reports that came out recently about Russian accounts being removed from that platform. And last but not least, a story that really isn't a story, but I'm going to talk about it so it doesn't get taken out of context later. Russian aircraft were intercepted by U.S. aircraft in the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone. So jumping right into Ukraine, there's been more movement along the front in the last week to 10 days than there has been in quite a while, especially if you take Bakhmut and Soledar, take that area out of the equation, which was really the focus for a few months now. For the first time in a long time, we're starting to see changes in territory control all across the east and south. I do think it's a little bit too early, recording this on February 15th, to say whether or not this is the Russian offensive or the start of the Russian offensive. I think we're going to have to wait and see how it plays out and if this continues. But there's three areas I'm going to talk about briefly here today. The first is Volodar in the south. The second is Bakhmut, no surprise there. And the third, Crimea, just a little further north of Bakhmut. So Volodar is an area where the Russians moved across this small body of water a couple weeks ago. And there's been pretty heavy fighting there and some reports of pretty staggering Russian casualties. I think I saw one in Newsweek, I'll double check, that had Russian casualties in and around Volodar in the thousands, which is a lot. Even for this conflict, to lose a couple thousand in a week or 10 days is a lot. I'm using, for this update, I used to use a lot of, and I still do, the live UA map because it's very simple. It's easy to provide a high-level view. None of these maps are going to be perfect. They all have their flaws. The way I approach which maps I'm going to show in some of these updates is it doesn't have to be 100% perfect for us, those of us who aren't using these maps to actually make decisions of how this war is going to be fought. And live UA map tends to be very clean, very easy to get a quick view of what's going on in different areas of a very confusing battlefield. But I'm using live UA, or I'm using the Institute for the Study of War today. Just the more I look at this one, I really like how it lays out not just the changes in territory, but you'll see on this map while we're down around Volodar, the yellow is area that Russia has claimed they've taken that has not yet been confirmed. And the blue is territory that Ukraine says they have taken in a counterattack, and that is also not yet confirmed. So I think there's some value in showing that on some of these maps. I might start using this one a little more frequently. But moving up to Bakhmut, not a lot of changes here. The situation is pretty much the same. There were some rumors, I'm not sure if they've been verified or not, that Western volunteers and aid workers had been asked to leave the city. That led to some speculation that the withdrawal of Bakhmut was coming relatively soon. But as I kind of joked about in the last video, we're on like month 4 now of Bakhmut being ready to fall any day. The Russians have continued to make progress to the north and the south around the city of Bakhmut, continuing to cut off any access to, or continuing to restrict access to the city, I should say. But for every report that Bakhmut's about to fall, there's a Ukrainian report that says they're holding strong and have no plans to give up the city. So the fight continues there. It looks as nasty as it's ever been. We'll see. Then moving a little further north to Crimea, this is an area where there's been a big uptick in fighting here over the last couple weeks. And this is kind of where the Ukrainian counteroffensive ended this past fall, up around Kharkiv. So this was kind of the extent of where they were able to push. There has been fighting there on and off for a long time. That's nothing new, but there's definitely been an uptick in the area of Crimea over the last couple weeks. But all of those, again, as of February 15th, we'll have to wait and see if this is the start of something or just, I don't want to say individualized attacks because that makes it seem like these are rogue groups and no communication at all. But again, not clear if this is part of something bigger or not quite yet. But moving into some TikTok reports. So there was a report that came out, I think, in Bloomberg last week that 1,700 Russian accounts have been removed from TikTok. So dug into that a little bit and found some interesting information I thought was worth diving into here. So TikTok puts out these reports for each quarter, and they have this one section called covert influence operations, and they called out the Russian one here. They said, we assessed that the network operated from Russia and targeted European countries, primarily Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom. The individuals behind these accounts created localized, inauthentic accounts and shared content in German, Italian, and English using speech synthesis in these languages, amplifying a pro-Russia viewpoint, targeting discourse about the war in Ukraine. There were 1,686 accounts in that network that had a combined total of 133,000 followers, which isn't a huge number on TikTok. And it'd be interesting to see what information they were sharing and how they figure out that these are all tied together and somehow associated. I did see in another report that they were able to identify these coming from Russia, but they weren't able to prove that they were influenced or directed by the Russian government. That's nothing new. But digging down on this list a little bit, there was another one from Spain where it was only 104 accounts, but they had almost 2 million followers. And it said, let's see, the network operated primarily from Spain and targeted audiences in the United States. The individuals behind these accounts created and amplified partisan U.S. civic content in English and Spanish using accounts posing as political parties. So there you go. That, 1,600 accounts for 130,000 followers is something. Don't want to brush that aside completely. But 2 million followers for 100 accounts kind of focused on political divide, political discourse in the United States. That's wild. Continuing on with these TikTok reports, they have another section titled Government Removal Requests Report. And I thought I didn't know this stuff existed. So I was just kind of digging through all this and reading about it. Something that I thought was interesting here was it lists the number of requests received from different governments to take down content on TikTok. So during this period of time in this report, which was, the beginning of 2022 through June 2022, so the first 6 months of the year, the United States submitted 13 requests total to have items removed. The removal rates, like what TikTok said, fine, we're going to remove that, was 22%. Ukraine submitted 13 requests also. Their removal rate was 18%. Russia submitted 1,169 removal requests of TikTok, and they had a 79.7% removal rate. Again, I don't know what it is that they're asking to be removed. It doesn't clarify, and I'll put the links to all these reports below so you can dig into them because they're kind of hard to see here. All right, and finally, NORAD conducts routine intercept of Russian aircraft entering Air Defense Identification Zone. So NORAD, which stands for the North American Aerospace Defense Command, put out a press release on February 14th saying that on the 13th, the day prior, they detected, tracked, positively identified, and intercepted 4 Russian aircraft entering and operating within the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone. This is a news item. It is a thing. It did happen. It's worth paying attention to this. It's nothing really out of the ordinary. NORAD goes on to say that this was expected. They knew it was coming. They were prepared. It's something that happens 6 to 7 times every year. The Russian aircraft did not leave international airspace. So this Air Defense Identification Zone is kind of the area outside of our airspace where we are focused on identifying aircraft. It's not out of the ordinary for this exact situation to play out, not just around the United States, but around countries all around the world. So I'm a little concerned that this topic could be spun into Russia testing our air defenses. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's pretty standard here. Of note, the Russian aircraft included a combination of Tu-95 bombers and Su-35 fighters. The intercepting team, if you will, included 2 F-16 fighters, 2 F-35 fighters, an E-3 Sentry AWACS, and 2 KC-135 Stratotankers. Stratotankers, I'm sure, probably weren't involved in the actual interception, but hey, they were part of it, so we'll include them here as well. But I'll put a link to the NORAD press release so you can check that out in the video description below. But that'll do it for now. We'll see y'all next time.